The following video is one in a series on spiritual resilience training, a non-religious view of personal values and their dynamics with others. The contents reflect a variety of principles and practices of systems theory in relational counseling for team building and family resilience. Although the series is intended to support Army Corps values, each video also encourages the viewer to reflect on their current prominent values in specific situations and to consider what values may be more appropriate to means and results that are honorable and helpful with others. Chaplain Dillard initiates creating and posting these videos. Their contents and YouTube's linked videos do not necessarily reflect specific beliefs, practices, requirements, or endorsements of the Department of Defense, its subordinate organizations, or other groups with which Chaplain Dillard is affiliated.
Welcome back. If you saw the previous series of videos on individual spiritual resilience, this is similar. It's a little different, but that may help you to see what we're doing here. If you haven't seen that, you might want to check that out. Again, our three goals are similar to the last series, and those are a safe, creative discussion of group values and greater awareness among the group in order to lead ourselves and others more appropriately and effectively in the moment. Now, what do I mean by that? This is a worksheet. Even though it's a video, you can take what I'm doing here with a blank sheet of paper, and you can do it with others in your family, in your office, on your church softball team, or what have you, to try to talk about what it is that makes your group tick. And I recommend that you do this individually at first, that you go ahead and try to graph this out and maybe talk to somebody else and explain the basics of them, basics of the worksheet to them so that they can do it individually, and then you compare notes and see what you have in common, maybe get some ideas from each other so that collectively you can most accurately depict what it is that your group values, what makes you tick. Because until we know why we are acting the way we do, we can't make decisions about whether we should continue with some things and change other things. All right, here's how this works. To depict 3 to 6 values that often seem prominent in your team through 2 pictures. One as you see the team now, and a second as you believe it should be. The hearts represent the dynamics of specific values, not specific people. The size indicates the prominence of the value, helpful or not, and the placement indicates the function, helpful or not, in the team and the mission. Values that seem to center, oversee, or undergird the system. Now, when I say system, what I mean is that every group, family, work team, social network, anything, all the parts make up the whole, and the individual parts all impact each other. They are interdependent, like the pieces of an engine. If you affect one, you affect the whole engine. So for something to be overseeing, centering, and undergirding, like a totem pole, they sit on top of each other. One may be most prominent, but the other may be most foundational, and what is in the middle obviously impacts the other two as well. So we have to ask ourselves, how do these things connect, specifically talking about values? Solid lines indicate values or connections that are strong, positive or not. Broken lines indicate values or connections that are weak, positive or not. And jagged lines indicate values or connections that clearly oppose the mission or unity. So as you graph this, we're going to visually depict some ways that we see these values functioning in our family or office or social networks. Is it helpful? Is it not? Is it very strong? Is it not? Is it more basic to the system, or is it more on top so everybody can see it more prominently? First, depict 1 or 2 of your team's most powerful values, centering, overseeing, or undergirding, currently and for the future, left to right. So as you depict these, left side is kind of now moving into the future, the values that you're currently emphasizing and believe that you should emphasize. And I've got it green, that arrow there, indicating the future, because we believe that valuing these things is going to work for us and make it even better for future values. So whether that is true or not, whether it's actually good or not, is not the point. How is the group currently functioning? For example, I'm in a group right now where productivity kind of oversees the system. Then depict one or two values that serve as the second most powerful function, again centering, overseeing, or undergirding. In my group, that happens to be individual excellence, and that's kind of foundational. But moving toward individual progress in the future, at least that is the hope. Now you can see there that I have a strong black line between productivity, which is kind of overseeing the whole system, and individual excellence, and I have some jagged lines on individual progress, because when people become individually competitive, then that is counterproductive to the team. Unless they're collaborating and their individual progression helps one another because it is collaborative. I guess that's redundant. But in one of the groups I'm in right now, that is not always the case. So individual progression, sometimes we hold our notes close to the chest and we don't share them because somebody else might benefit from those and get ahead of us. Sometimes that competition can be unhealthy and counterproductive to the group. Lastly, to pick one or two in the least powerful function, and in the group I'm referencing, it's probably individual success. And from left to right, the timeline seems to be an emphasis on a value of control, which is kind of micromanagement sometimes, and poor communication, which is why that is a dotted line or a dashed line around that heart-shaped value. So you can see here, this is one example of a team. I haven't told you if it's extended family or somebody in my neighborhood or somebody I used to work with years ago. That's not the point of this particular video. But you can see how these undergirding values and what centers the function of the team and what oversees the function of the team may or may not be helpful, may or may not be honorable for individual members or for the entire group function. Repeat these steps for the second picture, which is what you want the team to look like in the future. The facilitator of the exercise, which would be me or someone else, will use the examples below, not your individual worksheets. Now, that's the physically writing out of it. What does it mean? How do you draw significance from it? How do you make decisions with the content of it? So we understand our team better. Now what? Define the values. Describe the appeal of the current prominent value and one that most of the team wants to strengthen instead, prominent or not. Group dynamics can be very complex, so it's good to pick one of these that the group wants to work on, not all of them. You've probably heard the saying, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bite at a time. So after your group has come to a consensus about what your undergirding values are as a team, what kind of centers the purpose and function of the group, and what is kind of on top for good or bad, pick one that you want to work on. Something that's doable, something that is truly influential on the rest, because there'll be a domino effect. Once that changes, other things will begin to change as well. Secondly, acknowledge realism by brainstorming and recording 3 or 4 thoughts that trigger the current value and 3 or 4 countering thoughts that encourage the new value. Just as in the past, the last series where we had a kind of an Excel type sheet with this plan written out, one of the later videos will have this plan written out of how to do this. Right now I'm just describing the process to you. But it's very important that we understand that we have certain thoughts or beliefs that trigger us to value some things. If I believe that all of a certain type of people are manipulative, or all a certain age of people are irresponsible, then every time I have an encounter with one of those people, I will begin to view them through that lens, and that will affect my behavior towards them. So thoughts impact values and vice versa. And we need to record specific thoughts that trigger our leaning toward that negative value, and then other thoughts that counter that and lead us toward a more positive value. Third, build the buy-in among your team by brainstorming to identify and record 3 or 4 specific practical benefits to focusing on and strengthening the better value. Here I'm talking about the so what. It's not enough just to want something new. It's not enough just to believe the fact that it's going to be more logical or make more sense to you. We need to look at the practical outcome. If I do this, what will get better? And to write that down so that it's not just intellectual, it's not just a warm fuzzy, but it's actually practical. Fourthly, prepare for that tension by developing an action plan to strengthen the new value in each trigger or obstacle event for your team. You've got to have an action plan because there is going to be a tension. You're going to be at a fork in the road, and you'll be tempted to go back toward the old value, and you'll have the opportunity to go to the new, and you're going to feel torn. This is where you've been going. This is where you want to go. How do you lean yourself in a new direction? You need to have a plan for that and write it out. And to do that in several areas: relationships, behavior, intellect, emotions, and the changes that you want to maintain. Again, as I said in the previous series of videos on individual spiritual resilience, we're talking about the whole person. Our thinking, our feeling, our doing, our relationships with others, and the specific changes to maintain to help us move away from that old value, leaning toward the new value for the sake of our group. Hope that makes sense to you. It seems kind of complex, maybe, very detailed, but I think as you watch the second video on what we would like the new group to look like, the new values, so that we function in more helpful and honorable ways, that will make more sense. And in the third video, as we look at an actual plan, the pieces of the puzzle may come together for you. Again, as I've also said in previous videos, if we don't know what is fueling our behavior, what's fueling our thoughts, and those really are our values, if we're unaware, we will run on autopilot, and circumstances and feelings will drive your behavior. I don't think anybody wants to say that they are driven by circumstances or their emotions. They want to make informed choices that are truly good for their team, and that's what I want to help you to be able to do. Tune into us next week. We'll look at the second graph, and that is how we would like our teams to be. Just an example, not the way your team should be, just looking at the process, and hope to see you then.
At the release date of this video, I am stationed with Research, Development, and Engineering Command, RDECOM, at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. Because the majority of our personnel are in this area, I spend most of my time here. I do, however, travel to our distant units based on command priorities and budget. I place these videos on YouTube for broad visibility to Army personnel and their families, but I hope the videos will be helpful to others too. If you are assigned to RDECOM and want to request specific topics by video, training on site or by VTC, or confidential counseling on site or by secure webcam, you can contact me at jeffrey.d.dillard.mil@mail.mil.